Hi, this is John Reed, and this might be the shortest chapter in my informal reading of Reaching the Informed B2B Buyer, a diginomica ebook that I wrote. The reason I wanted to isolate this chapter a little bit is because it really focuses on putting it into practice. So before we get to the final sections on AI debates and fun stuff like that, I really wanted to hone in on, okay, we've looked at a lot of material on kind of how to do this and why it matters, but let's look at it on the ground, get a few field lessons in before we continue. So with that, Chapter 5, Put It Into Practice, Winning B2B Content Examples. You've come this far, so how do you put it into practice? Crummy, pretentious, and brand-infatuated pseudo-thought leadership is, unfortunately, everywhere. But there are also compelling examples of content that engages and pulls audiences closer. One burning question is, where should the content live? When it comes to that helpful expert type of content of the how-to variety, the corporate website is still ideal. That's the type of in-depth, keyword-rich content you want search engines to chew on. That said, such content is less about stylish narratives and pulling data points into industry lessons. Of course, you can demonstrate customer intimacy in all forms of thought leadership, but helpful content is quite forgiving when it comes to the sophistication of your writing skills. Such content is more about ease of consumption, appealing formats, and answering your prospects' and customers' top questions. So now let's kind of have a look at how you can implement across these various scenarios, including higher-level thought leadership and also use case scenarios. Case studies. Build that knowledge base. A cloud ERP user earns customer trust. A couple of years ago, I talked to an Acumatica cloud ERP customer about how they were reaching buyers with content. Here's what they said. We're going to start moving back further up the supply chain and start to build relationships with the customer base. We're building impressions upon them, and we start to build relationships based on that. And we're getting up earlier in the cycle to help them not only create the need, but also to be there when the need occurs. Helping customers make sense of changing regulations is always a win. They continued. In the utility market, there's a big regulatory requirement called NERC and FERC. We're looking to expand on being able to provide all the compliance information for those regulatory requirements, so we fully take care of the customer. They don't have to worry about that. They don't have to spend their resources on it. We're out there doing it. Yes, that's rich search content for your website. One lesson is that each of the top questions your customers have about doing business with you should have its own dedicated, carefully titled page on your website. But how many B2B brands have this? Surprisingly few. Of course, such a page can be smartly sprinkled with links to product info, demo requests, and opt-in events as well. The Acumatica customer who asked not to be named to keep their plans anonymized also shared this. Build that knowledge base. One of the things we've seen as buyers have moved companies, they bring us in because of the expertise and because of what we provided to them. Message Lab, another use case. This one is content ROI via the idea store. Moving beyond helpful content into idea-related content, let's turn to what Message Lab is up to. I wrote about this more extensively in an article called Reaching Enterprise Buyers, Why Do B2B Marketers Fall Short? On Diginomica, so you can check that out for the full story. Remember that LinkedIn stat about how only 1 in 5 buyers is in buying mode at any given time? In a podcast with Todd Kane of Evolved Radio, Message Lab CEO Ben Worthen used the example of a manager reevaluating their accounting function. What if they aren't ready to search for accounting software? And what if they want to learn the best accounting metrics and about what leading enterprises are doing? Worthen told Kane, I only think about buying stuff 5% of the time. The vast majority of my time, I'm thinking about other things. It may be ideas, topics, issues that I'm facing that are broader than, but sort of related to the product. I run a business too, and let's say we needed to think about our accounting. There's issues like, are we doing a good job? Are we paying attention to the right financial metrics? Do we need a different accountant? So should we have new accounting software? That's only a small part of the things we would think about in the universe there. Therefore, said Worthen, a narrow overemphasis on product content falls short. He continued, so if all you're doing as a business from a content perspective is how to evaluate your accounting software, you're missing many opportunities to engage with someone around an idea that you would generally have an opinion about or a point of view that you could contribute. Okay, so what's the alternative? Something Worthen called an idea store. He adds, the people searching for the best accounting metrics for small businesses want something different. They don't want to be told what software to buy. They want an idea that's going to help them. They want information that's going to help them make decisions and then solve a problem. We often use this metaphor of an idea store. Everyone knows what their product store is. You know what you're selling, you know what's on the shelves. But if you had a different store where all you sold was ideas, what would be on the shelves? What would the customer experience be? One thing I particularly like about the idea store metaphor, you have to keep the customer coming back. As Worthen explained, how would you behave in order to turn people into repeat customers of your ideas? Get them to come back and buy a new idea each time. When you're on social, you're sort of thumbing through your phone in a fairly passive mode. You're looking for something that captures your attention and your imagination. Earning attention through fresh ideas leads to deeper engagement. Worthen added, if you're the one who's having that strategic conversation with them, then you're in a better position later on when they're ready to buy something. Not when they finish a blog post, but at a different point in time. They might be more likely to buy from you. But we believe that first you participate in that conversation. But Message Lab is a business, not a content experiment. What about ROI? Worthen revealed, someone who has seen our content one time has less than a 1% chance that they're going to become a qualified lead. But by the time someone has seen our content 3 times, there's a 9% chance they're going to become a qualified lead. And if it's 4 or 5 times that they've seen the content, it just goes up and up. And in the rest of this chapter, I compiled some additional winning examples spanning many different types of content. Peter Coffey of Salesforce. For years on Diginomica, Coffey has been taking on topical and tough topics. One example I pulled for the ebook was Don't Put Off Buying a Ladder, a hard look at the problem of decision-making in recessionary times. David Apple of Sage Intacct. David Apple, who leads Sage Intacct's SaaS industry vertical, has developed a robust maturity model driven directly from deep analysis of Sage's own SaaS customers. That results in standout content like It's Set for Recovery, top metrics for SaaS, and subscription finance leaders post-quarantine. Apple hits a lot of the keynotes I've covered here, including the power of vertical community. Speaking of which, another fascinating example comes via a piece I did with Marcus Wagner, then CEO of Act 2, now acquired by Baker Tilly, on how they literally built their own community of CFOs and faith-based institutions. Most services partners don't know how to do that. John Appleby of Avantra. Over the last decade, I've seen Appleby, CEO of Avantra, literally transform his career via his approach to authoritative content in the SAP industry, written in an accessible style. As he shifts focus to AI ops and ERP automation, Appleby retains a welcome ability to problematize overused buzzwords like seamless integration. Meg Bear, who was working with SAP when I originally wrote this. I rarely pick an executive based on their social feeds, but Bear is an exception. She's authored some notable blog posts, but Bear is one of the few who really stands out on social channels, with a strong blend of humor and conviction. I've also seen Bear challenge SAP critics while she was at SAP, effectively on Twitter, not by echoing the company line, but by getting into the fray with use cases and data. Laura Cesare, supply chain shaman. Cesare is a former Gartner analyst who has become one of the best enterprise bloggers out there. Her network of influence spans from a monster LinkedIn following to her own customer events. It all starts with her personable, outspoken writing style, backed up with loads of data and strong, specific advice. Bob Stutz. Stutz is a CRM industry veteran who has worked for some of the giants in the industry. He is a model of how an executive who knows their game can be outspoken and spark important conversations. On the CRM Players video show, Stutz took even the host by surprise, calling out vendors on enterprise pricing a while back. Being outspoken can come off like a publicity stunt if you're not careful, but if it's done effectively, it's another matter entirely, and Stutz is a good model for how to do that. Bonnie Duncan Tinder. Vendor and market research can be done in a way that is agnostic and adds credibility to the vendors that participate. Such is the case with Bonnie Tinder of Raven Intel, who gathers ratings data on the performance of HR tech vendors and the services forms that support them. Tinder freely shares this data in blogs, podcasts, and video appearances, and has been on my show as well. Stacey Harris, another HR tech analyst. Harris and her team at Sapient Insights Group also report on the market in a vendor-agnostic way. I believe this follow-the-data approach is the future of enterprise research. The objectivity resonates with buyers. And vendors can learn from these examples and also engage with this kind of data, though it may not always conform to their internal narrative, but that's kind of the point, and that's kind of the point of my whole book here. Raju Vajizna of Zoho. As a company, Zoho takes bold stances on data privacy and a different approach to workplace culture and transnational localism as well. Vajizna, Zoho's chief evangelist, has advanced these conversations with content that reflects his own takes on these topics. 2 hallmarks of his style: a passion for the subject, and a broad view that incorporates trends far beyond Zoho. Example, taking on big tech's approach to consumer data privacy and tying that into enterprise concerns. Strong positions with context translate into many formats. In conjunction with Players Production Network's Brent Leary, Vajizna and another Zoho colleague, Tejas Gadia, have regularly shared video updates via a very watchable video show, Watching Privacy. And I don't always use the word watchable when it comes to enterprise video. I continue to document interesting and compelling content use cases on Diginomica, as do some of my colleagues, but that's a good roundup of ones you can check out now and be inspired by and hopefully learn from.